Okay, so it's effectively the end of my game of the Korean War. I'm finishing on the 8th turn, right at the beginning of the 8th turn, because there's just no way that the United Nations can gain a win. The best in practically a fantasy scenario is a North Korean marginal victory. It's probably going to be substantive. The problem is that we've got 5 more game turns left, and the UN are here. I think realistically they should be up to here and be slogging it out, being perhaps pushed back, but having taken Pyongyang, Wonsan, maybe even Hamhung, Hungnam, maybe even right up at the Yalu, having gained some 6 or 5 victory points in a turn up there. Because at the moment we're in a global tension level of 2, which means minus 10 victory points every turn. At the moment, if they take Seoul, they're going to get 22 victory points every turn. Minus 10, that's 12 every turn. 5 more, that's 60. They're on 48 now. That's 108 maximum, which is a North Korean substantive victory. If the UN managed to go up, take Wonsan, Pyongyang in the next turn, which is really a fantasy, they'd still only be able to gain a North Korean marginal victory. So I'm calling it here. There's no point in going further because the UN have run out of options. There's nothing else they can do except push on. The only option I didn't sort of bring into play was the paratroopers, and I was going to bring them in to support the amphibious landing here at Taetan, which would have pushed on to Pyongyang, and I forgot, and so that last chance really fizzled out. The only chance UN has is if the in my play in this kind of situation, is if the North Korean line collapses, complete collapse, and so there's just like free rolling for the United Nations, and they can grab a whole lot of territory before there's any sort of further communist intervention. And that's not going to happen in this game because the UN only have 3 more divisions available to bring on, and the North Koreans are rolling for full Chinese intervention, and they missed it last turn. It didn't happen. I rolled the die for the first action phase of this turn just to project ahead, see if there's any chance the UN, and they got it. So that means they get 12 more, even with having invaded Formosa, they get 12 more divisions coming on. There's nothing the UN's going to be able to do against that. They might take Seoul because those divisions won't get down in time, but they won't take Wonsan and Pyongyang because those divisions will be onto those within a turn. Or maybe 2 turns depending on interdiction, but still, even if they did get them, they would only hold them for, even if the UN took them, they would only hold them for a turn or 2, I think. I don't know. I could play it out, see if we can get a North Korean marginal, but I'm kind of quite demoralised. I'm obviously doing something terribly wrong with the UN. And my first mistake I can see now is going for full-on intervention right from the beginning. I went full on, and I really needn't have that. I was just thought, right, just give me all the reinforcements. Essentially, this last set of reinforcements on the end here, they're just assets. They're really weak. They're not really worth it. So I could have backed off 1 or 2 levels of intervention just for these last ones. There's a division there, and a couple of lower strength non-US division. Is it brigades or divisions? Brigades, yes, a couple of brigades here. But that's it, there's a division there. I could have stopped here and forfeited at least those 2, which would have brought global tension down. It maybe wouldn't have got even to 2 at this point. And that I might have been able to pip a draw with my play. Then the other thing is, essentially what I need to perfect is the amphibious landings and how to support those. The trouble is that it's difficult drawing in the supply because you have to roll on a depot table, and when you the UN, when you're, for example, if your supplies coming in on a beachhead, where's the table here? If it's only a depot 1, then you're only going to get supply on a 6, 7, 8 or 9 on the D10. If it's level 2, that's a 1 between a 2 and 9. So you really need your beachhead at depot level 2, which means your mainland depot is going to be depot level 1. You might not get any supply. So essentially what it means is you can only sort of put a full-on offensive with either the beachhead or your mainland campaign. You can maybe alternate it turn to turn, but action phase to action phase. So 1 each in a turn, but you couldn't do them both at the same time, so you can only push in one area at any one action phase. And I was, I guess, hoping I was going to get lucky rolls and I'll be able to do both. And that, I mean, that's a thought of generally my play anyways. I sort of push my luck. I hope I'd run risks without taking too much consideration of the consequences. So, you know, that's sort of par for the course for me. But it would be interesting as a solo player. I rarely sort of want to go back in and try a game again, because it takes quite a lot out of you as a solo player because you're playing both sides, and so I don't sort of have the stamina to keep pushing, like to reset this and to clear my mind and to come back at it. At the moment my mind's sort of fatigued on it, so what I'm likely to do is go off and play something else and not come back to this for some years. And I might have forgotten all the lessons I learned, which is why sometimes I write down notes and stick it in the box with the game to remind me next time I come back to it. But so I would like to play this again, and I would like to figure out how to do the UN offensives. And if I had an opponent and we played it again, that would give me the stamina. That the energy from having an opponent challenge me would bring me back to the table on this, definitely. But now I guess I'm a bit demoralised and henceforth fatigued. I was fine up until now, and I just realised the UN haven't got a hope in hell, and I suddenly realised I have been... At first I thought, I was thinking my offensive was quite slow, but I thought maybe I'm slow and steady because I got all those... all the reinforcements. I'm going to get a breakout and suddenly it'd be spectacular, and it just hasn't happened. It'd be interesting. Something had to happen from the Busan breakout, as it were. I never had that. The North Koreans fell back in good order and were then reinforced with the Communist Chinese. So I should have, historically the UN went past 30th parallel and then the Communist Chinese came in and surprised them all the way up north. I just didn't do it. I look at it thinking, how the hell is that possible? Especially if the amphibious landing is at Incheon, and you can do 2, 3, depending on your mobilisation level, at least one amphibious landing each turn. So you could have one at Incheon, then the next one up here, then the next one, next one. And I think that is going to have to be the way. That it has to be that the any line that the North Koreans form has to be destabilised by an amphibious landing behind them, cutting off their supplies, then they're having to pull back. So I think it would be a matter of moving up to the line, cutting it in, line falling back, cutting it in, line falling back, like that. Continual amphibious landings, which means you're always going to have to have at least 2 divisions feeding into the GHQ reserve box, so you don't have them on the land. It's going to be tricky. A fine challenge to pick up though. So anyway, there we are. That's a fine mess I leave it in. And I'm sorry if people are watching this to see go all the way, or to see the war recreated But it was what it was, and that was how it was for me. It'd be interesting to see amphibious invasions all the way up here. I would like to see that. That would have to be a strong UN effort. They would have to be, I would have thought, at least up to here to be able to have any sense of supporting that, or otherwise it could be flooded by the communists and even the Soviet communists. And then they could be sort of cut off, and then there'd still be time to move that all down unless the UN were pushing right high up against the border there and accumulating victory points along the way. But you see, that's the only way, I think, for automatic UN victory, and without that, it's the long slog. And to do that, you are going to have, I think, you're going to have to necessarily get all the way up to the north, with global tension at 1 or 2 at most. So you're doing that with not that much, as many resources as I have. Okay, that's it then for this game of the Korean War. I suppose, just as an afternote, this tells the tale is that in my game that the North Koreans, they almost reached absolute victory. In fact, they did historically, didn't they? I don't know if they took that historically and only had Busan, but maybe if they'd done that, if they'd taken that, maybe that was historical. Yeah, I think it was it not, that they only had left Busan to the UN? That would have been a North Korean automatic victory there. As it is, the game, I'm going to say a marginal one.